simplify each of the following, and then we're given several expressions with exponents that we need to simplify. This is going to give us a little bit more practice dealing with exponents and negatives, which is something that we really can't have too much practice with. A lot of students struggle. Let's start with the first one, which doesn't have any negatives, just kind of sets the scene for what we're looking at. We've got n squared to the fourth, and this is one of those situations where we have a power of a power. We've got an exponent on top of an exponent, and in a situation like this, we need to multiply the exponents. So this becomes n to the eighth, because 2 times 4 is 8. Let's take a look at the other ones, though. Here we've got negative 3 times n squared to the fourth. Now in this problem, this exponent of 4 is on the parentheses, so it only affects what's inside the parentheses. It doesn't have any bearing on that negative 3. So the negative 3 is going to stay out front, and then we can use the same rule we just used. N squared to the fourth is n to the eighth. So here we have negative 3 n to the eighth. The next one is the opposite of 3n squared raised to the fourth power. In this case, the exponent doesn't affect the negative, so the negative is going to stay out front. However, it does affect the 3, because the 3 is inside the parentheses, and it does also affect the n squared, so we have to distribute it. We're going to have 3 to the fourth, and then also n squared to the fourth. Now the negative stays out front. 3 to the fourth is 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, which is 81, and then n squared to the fourth is n to the eighth, as it has been. So now we've got negative 81 n to the eighth. We can see how all of these are a little bit different from the others. Now the last one, the negative is in the parentheses, negative 3n squared to the fourth. So here the negative is affected by that exponent. We've got negative 3 that gets raised to the fourth power, as well as n squared that gets raised to the fourth power. Now negative 3 to the fourth power, it's a negative times a negative times a negative times a negative. That's going to be positive 81, and n squared to the fourth is n to the eighth. So in this situation, we end up with positive 1 n to the eighth. So we can see how all of these situations are treated slightly differently, but using the same logic. The whole thing is what gets affected by the exponent and what remains unaffected by the exponent. That's really a big thing that always comes up when we're looking at exponents, and you've got to be really careful with those.